day two.
Two.
How are you feeling?
There's definitely a lot of a severe lack of sleep, but I couldn't be more excited. Day one has been so amazing. Lots of stuff to catch up on, and there doesn't seem to be enough time in the day to kind of catch up on everything. So
that's why we're here. We're going to help with the time compression, the time shifting, because while you're in one event, you check your message, and another thing is happening somewhere else. So try the best we can to process in parallel, which is very appropriate for some of the themes of this conference is parallel processing.
Exactly.
Well, how was your day yesterday? What did you end up doing?
Okay, so yesterday was, I don't think I've had such an early start to the day. We started prepping for this live stream yesterday at 4:30 a.m.
Yep.
And I think I ended my day at about 11 p.m. last night. So an absolutely packed day with some amazing conversations throughout the day, catching up on the 50 plus announcements that AWS made throughout the day. Just in the last 24 hours has been quite something. A lot of amazing new announcements that we're going to cover today. Most importantly, I think my Apple Watch basically clocked in at over 14,000 steps yesterday.
Oh yeah, how is? Let's check out our step counts. I looked at 12,489. Let's see. Let's see the step count. Yeah, I am at 12,489. You were at 14,283.
283. Yeah.
All right. Well, we are both doing pretty well.
Correct. And I think I got that little bit of a increased step count because at some point during the day I was trying to fight jet lag, and the way to do that was to stand up and walk around with a bottle of water in my hand. But it was an absolutely amazing day yesterday. There's so much to cover today.
And then also I wanted to show the expo opened. So part on the CloudFix side. So go to booth 1529. That's the CloudFix booth. I did a LinkedIn post on this. It's incredible that what the booth looks like. If you go to the expo at 1 o'clock, so it opens at 4.
Right.
At 1 o'clock, there's still loaders and forklifts and carpet being rolled out.
Yep.
It's incredible how timed it is. And our team, they're getting pumped. They're getting all the swag out. They're getting the T-shirts, the stickers ready to go. And
correct.
This is here. Let me show you kind of what it looks like. And this is just milling around outside. How busy it is. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah. And it's
a hive of activity over there before the show starts, and the transformation is staggering. Just 3 or 4 hours before the show is about to start at the expo floor, the general public is not let in, but only the organizers and people who need to be on the expo floor to get stuff set up are allowed. But in those 3 to 4 hours, that place turns from where you wonder how is this ever going to be set up in such a short period of time, but there are hundreds of people working to get all the last minute updates and changes and everything set up. It's amazing to see what happens on the show floor.
Yeah, it is. So come check out the expo, visit us, visit everyone else. It's a good time to kind of see, because companies put their best foot forward, right? Correct. So it's really a good way to see condensed, up-to-date version of the information that you're looking. And
correct.
They're ready. They have their messaging clarified, and so you can go up and talk to anyone and should be able to get an up-to-date perspective on where the company you're visiting is at.
I think what I also like about the expo floor is that almost every organization has some of their best experts over there who are there to speak with you. You get access to some amazing folks. So make the most of it. Go onto the expo floor if you're here in Vegas and meet with the people. That's what reInvent is kind of all about. Talk to them, see what they're excited about in terms of what's coming up in the next year. Talk to them about their products. Talk to them about their experience with AWS. Learn from all of that, because a lot of these folks have been doing this for many years. So there's tons of learnings to be had. And make the most of being here in person. And for those who are not, we will have snippets of what's happening on the expo floor throughout this week.
Awesome. And then I see our LinkedIn is getting more and more people trickling in. So please say where you're visiting from, and we'd love to. If you have any questions, please ask in the chat. Same with YouTube, same with Twitch. Please just make a comment, say where you're visiting from. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
All right. Should we? Well, why don't we cue the announcement ticker? I love the announcement ticker. Can we cue that up? This is our news feed is pulling direct from the AWS RSS feed. So let's see if we can get that announcement ticker pulled up.
Yep, I think it's up now.
Oh, awesome. Okay, what are we seeing? Oh, wow. EFS replication now supports failback.
Yep.
Dashboard enhancements in AWS Security
Yeah, actually,
Hub.
Security Hub looks very different now. And the dashboard enhancements make it really simple to actually make it more actionable. You actually can prioritize and go figure out exactly what you need to solve right away. It's a lot more readable.
Yeah. And then I've mentioned it before, we have this Google chat where every single time the RSS feed gets updated, it gives this little ping onto our Google chat. And sometimes it happens in batches, and you'll see ding, 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 and just AWS announcements. So
correct. Yesterday, I think the 50 plus announcements over the last 24 hours came in about 3 tranches. So I'd be interested in trying to figure out if this was something at our end, because we're pulling kind of in batches, or is it something the way AWS sends out these updates?
If they update it in batches. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, let's cover some of your highlights. We've got the AWS Lambda functions now scale 12 times faster when handling high volume requests. I will put the link over here in the comments. Put that in LinkedIn. Yeah, AWS Lambda functions now scale 12 times faster. So what does it mean, scale? This means concurrent executions.
Correct. So also, when you have a lot of HTTP requests that come in all of a sudden, you typically had cold start times, or the ramp up to handle that kind of volume used to be in the seconds, if not more. And for a lot of cases, that's just too much wait. Like imagine a Black Friday kind of situation, or a Cyber Monday situation where you have customers on your retail website, and they click a button to look up some information, and then they have to wait for 3 or 5 seconds because you are one of a million users trying to access the service. So scaling up and being able to respond to a very large number of Lambda calls all happening at the same time used to take some time to ramp up to the volume. So even though Lambdas are supposed to be kind of serverless and seamless, now with this new enhancement, they ramp up a lot faster. And so you can go from, I think the equivalent would be in the automobile analogy, it's like going from 0 to 100. They just went from 12 seconds to 1 second.
Yeah. Okay. So so what it said is it used to take, it can only scale by 500 concurrent executions every minute. Right. So if you went from 0 to 20,000, that's going to take you 40 minutes to actually scale up.
Correct.
To that 20,000 per minute rate.
Correct.
And so now it can do that 12 times faster. That's really impressive that it can allocate that capacity so quickly.
Absolutely. And I think, again, I'm going to reiterate one of the points I make over and over again. When it comes to a lot of these AWS serverless technologies, the beauty of them is that you get the benefit of all of these new features. For free, you literally have to do nothing to benefit from it. So you make the long-term bet on these serverless solutions, and you've got all these amazing features coming at you as they develop and enhance all of these. So love this announcement. I think it's going to make a big difference for a lot of folks who right now, unfortunately, over-provision for specific events like Black Friday and Cyber Monday. But now you can let the system scale, for a lot of the cases. You don't have to over-provision quite to that extent.
Sure. And I love this blog post because it gives you this breakdown in very granular amounts of time. So 0 seconds, 10 seconds.
Right. So this one is really neat. I'm curious. We didn't quite prep for this, but are we doing the rating of the blogs?
Why not? Let's do the rep. I think for this one, they have announcements. They have documentation. They have so this is Marsha Villalba. She's very very thorough. I'm going to go ahead and give this a 5. What do you think?
I agree. I think this one is pretty neat. It has all the details. It has the stats. It has a good presents a good case for how it scales and all the details you need. And most importantly, you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Just get the benefits of it right out of the box.
I like that. And there's no price increase, right? There's no there's no other dimension. Correct. So let's put up a simplifies. There we go.
Definitely simplifies. And absolutely 5-star.
Awesome. Well, nice work, Marsha. We like your blogs a lot.
Correct.
Okay.
Awesome.
Amazon One Enterprise.
That's the new one. And so this one is actually really interesting. Recently at the Amazon Go stores, they started introducing a palm-based identification where you could basically just show your palm on the sensor and walk right in, and felt very futuristic. Mm-hmm. But it's pretty neat. It's another way of doing biometrics or analysis where you just use your palm. Now that is being made available via API and as a service to any customer that wants to implement this for their enterprise. So you could be a retailer, you could be, you want to set up ID for your office. You don't have to worry about carrying an ID with you everywhere you go to get access to your office or your premises. You can just use this new feature or this new service.
This is great. So does this come with a hardware, or is the API take an image of a palm, or is there some hardware device? I imagine there's some lower level processing that gets done by the device before you.
So I think it just scans the palm, and this is really interesting. I haven't had a chance to actually dive deeper into it, but I would imagine that if you had the IR image of the palm, that basically has almost like a fingerprint reader.
Because part of it's your veins, right? Like the structure of your veins, and it okay.
Correct. So, but if you had that image, you could basically identify somebody. So I think this is a lot more of the backend API. I'm assuming that there's going to be a bunch of new hardware that's going to be flooding the market that leverages this new API and this new way of identifying yourself.
It reminds me, one time one of my kids asked me for the password to my computer, and my computer, I use Touch ID, and so I sent them back a picture of my finger. I get back, very funny.
But so I'm actually very interested in figuring out how or where this technology kind of moves, because the other technology that's catching on really, really fast is just facial recognition, being able to recognize someone's face walking right through a system where you don't have to do anything extra. I think that's a lot more frictionless. So while I was coming in here, I was flying via Dubai, and at the Dubai airport, a lot of the immigration, a lot of the checks are all now facial recognition. So if you're a resident of Dubai, you literally don't have any immigration. You walk through the system, and it recognizes your face and lets you through. So that feels more frictionless than this, but it'll be interesting to see how this evolves.
Well, should we put a rating on this one?
I would give this a 3, just because a lot of the details about how this, gets implemented or what hardware we need, it's not there in the blog post. You'd probably have to spend a bunch of time diving into it. But
I agree. It's a bit, we don't get to know exactly what it is.
Yeah. So if you go to the preview, the website, it shows these kiosks with the palm readers in the video out there. But yeah, I think it's missing the exciting details in the blog post.
But if you're going to, I still say this simplifies though, because it's going to replace something that's far more complicated.
I completely agree. I'd be interested in building a desktop version of this.
That would be interesting.
Authenticate and see how that works, because I don't have Touch ID on my Mac Mini with my Logitech keyboard. So this would be interesting. Let's see if we can make that work.
Or should we go over? We have how many more announcements? Should we do all 4?
Yeah, let's do all of them. Right. I think there's just so many, but these are some important ones that people will want to.
Here we go. Here is Redshift serverless with AI-driven scaling and optimizations. We're going to get into this in more detail. This was
announced. We want to pull it up on the screen as well?
Let me do that.
Because it might be easier to for the audience to
no problem.
To look at the details.
Pull that up right now.
Okay, so this is another one which is AI-driven scaling.
There we go.
So Redshift serverless now looks at the details are pretty interesting. So they actually look at your data volume changes, your concurrent users, and your query complexity to decide how much resources need to be allocated to your Redshift serverless. I shouldn't call it an instance because it's serverless, but for your Redshift needs, and all of that is automatically handled. There's a AI model that's runs behind the scenes to figure out what the best allocation of resources should be, so that your performance does not degrade and it scales up and down as needed. So that's pretty neat. Again, another example of serverless getting the benefits of all this scaling where you don't have to figure stuff out yourself. So I think back to the conversation that we were having yesterday, there is a certain gap between serverless and people wanting to run things manually themselves. And that gap is narrowing dramatically as feature parity is kind of falling in place. And at the same time, a lot of these managed benefits are being implemented and just come out of the box.
I'm looking forward to digging into the details, hearing exactly how they use their AI-driven query analysis to scale, so that way you can run both steady state workloads and also random, say, data science or ETL queries that come in and would typically bog down even if it's serverless, there's still at any given time a certain amount of hardware allocated to it.
Yes.
And so we're going to hear a bit more about how that works. I've put the URL in the chat. How we're going to rate this one?
This one actually, again, I think definitely simplifies. And I'd give this a good 4.5.
There we go. 4.5.
Again, because you don't need to do anything. It's really simple. It's just benefits being communicated to you. So, yeah, couldn't be happier.
All right, that is that one. Let's do. What is our next one?
AWS Step Functions launches support for HTTPS endpoints. So this is really neat. Now, if you guys remember a little while ago, Lambda had created support for HTTPS endpoints directly. So when you're configuring your Lambda function, you could actually create an HTTPS endpoint without having to set up an API gateway. So that overhead kind of was removed. So if you have just internal operations where you have a bunch of different services that are talking to each other internally, instead of having to create an API gateway and then figure out how that routing is all going to work, you can avoid all of those overheads and just have Lambda functions expose HTTP endpoints that can be used as internal communication endpoints. Now, that same mechanism is now being extended over to step functions, which is amazing because now for all of your internal services, you don't have to expose a step function with a Lambda that then has an API gateway interface in front of it. So the easiest way to trigger it now is going to be via an HTTPS call. So it's secure, it's HTTPS. I would not recommend exposing this out externally to the world, but for all of your internal services, I think this is it's pretty incredible. I think it'll reduce a lot of the overload that API gateway and the limitations over there kind of have, and you can seamlessly add, you reduce the friction and the overheads that API gateway adds to get jobs executed.
That makes sense. All right,
rating. I would actually give this a good 4.5 actually, and it definitely simplifies.
Because this is going to add some for the people who are using this.
Yeah.
This is going to make it a lot easier to have that security HTTPS endpoints.
Correct. It also reduces the friction to get started because then step function is kind of self-contained in that sense. Because for any internal, tool that you're trying to build, you can create it in step functions in the studio, and once you've done that, you can expose it as an HTTP endpoint and just play around with it, and you can have other applications or other tools start calling this right away. The friction to get started has been reduced dramatically with this.
All right. that away. Okay. We've got another one. We've got Code Whisperer, new enhancements to Code Whisperer.
This one is pretty exciting, and this one revolves around infrastructure as code. So I was very excited to read this. I love Code Whisperer, by the way. I can't now imagine writing code without Code Whisperer being set up in my IDE. I almost feel paralyzed when I don't have it if I'm, say, on an aircraft or, trying to code in a place where I don't have access to Code Whisperer. So Code Whisperer has been awesome, but now all that amazing functionality and capabilities are extended out to infrastructure as code as well. So whenever you want new Terraform scripts to be created, CloudFormation scripts, CDK, whatever, Code Whisperer now understands all of that, and it can generate your infrastructure as code for you.
So you can type in, I want to have a Lambda function with a function URL, which can talk to an S3 bucket, and can also write to an SQS queue, and have that CloudFormation template get written out for you, so you don't have to. Now, I'm sure we all have CloudFormation templates that we've cargo culted little bits and copy and pasted from other ones that we know it works. And I need to remember that IAM permissions or bring that over, and it can be, unless you're in the thick of it every day. It's a bit obtuse to get your head back into it when you need to.
Exactly.
And so with Code Whisperer, you know how it works. You can type in what you need, scan it over, make sure it's what you want, and then makes it a lot easier.
Absolutely. Now, for those who live in the IDE, there's nothing better than Code Whisperer to get all of this stuff done for you. Again, it's a 10 to 100x performance or productivity improvement for you. So check it out. For those of you who want to look at another option, the very same thing. I just remembered that Application Composer now supports a prompt where you can literally, just like you said, I want an application that sets up an S3 bucket and a Lambda that talks to it and does ABC. You can have that mechanism within Application Composer and have Application Composer generate all of your infrastructure as code, ready to go infrastructure as code. I think it's limited to CDK, if I'm not mistaken.
That is cool.
But CDK or SAM templates, I'm still trying to remember. But it'll generate that infrastructure as code for you, and you can get started right away. And you can do this from the console.
All right, so rating for this one.
I would give this 4.5, and definitely simplifies.
And I think that missing half star is because Code Whisperer still hasn't come out with their Emacs plugin yet. I'm waiting for this. Code Whisperer team, that's how you get that last half of a cloud. I know at some point they will open up the API. I mean, I've heard rumors of that right now the integration is with VS Code and other things, and it's using some API that's still in motion. So eventually that will be, as that stabilizes, there'll be a plugin for other editor integrations.
Agreed.
All right, final announcement.
One more.
Oh, this is one of your favorite services. All right, putting this on the screen. Let's have a look at this. Conversational FAQ with generative AI for Amazon Lex.
Okay, so this one is a little confusing in terms of where it fits in. It feels like an extended feature of AWS Connect. And because this is where you basically end up using it. You're trying to manage a call center operation, your support services, and so on. And this is a great way to kind of offer an FAQ chatbot with Lex. So it's kind of a combination of Lex and this new FAQ. It's basically an implementation of the RAGs, the retrieval augmented generation. So you basically have you provide it with all of your content, all of your knowledge bases, and it will basically generate a chatbot that's able to answer all the frequently asked questions. So definitely simplifies a lot. I've seen, this is probably one of the number one use cases I've seen organizations around the world implement with generative AI. And now, instead of creating it all by yourself, you have a service that's available, low friction, incredible scale, incredible reliability. You should be able to use this right out of the box. So again, perfect example of something that AWS just commoditized and made it available to everyone.
Well, awesome. That is a simplifies and a. Do we get the clouds? I think this is a 5.
Yeah, I think I'd give this a.
I know you're slightly biased towards Lex. It is really cool, and hopefully we keep moving into that UI direct. Well, the UI will be conversational.
Correct.
All right. Let's take a 30-second break, and then when we come back, well, first of all, I want to appreciate this. Look at this. We got the full moon again. We've got over the Las Vegas. We got the mountain range. It's quite lovely. So we'll take a 30-second break, and then when we are back, let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Peter DeSantis' keynote last night. Dig into the details about what he said. We'll be right back.
Some tools just find AWS cost savings and make you do all the work. Visualizing cost opportunities is great, but that's not enough. CloudFix, on the other hand, actually delivers those savings for you. And you don't need to worry because CloudFix is AWS recommended and easy to use. It's the only tool that fixes cost-saving opportunities and not just finds. It's the easiest way to save money on AWS. It's all 100% automatic and risk-free. And the best part of all, it works non-stop. Stop overspending on AWS and click on the button to start saving now.
All right, we are back. So Peter DeSantis, can we pull up his little info? Peter DeSantis, again, he's been with EC2 AWS since the beginning,
pretty much.
And he likes to have a more lighthearted theme to his keynote. And so the theme yesterday, he said there was 5 L's, which was laughter, logger, learning, launches, and more logger. So 2 of the L's were duplicated, but that's okay. We wanted to go through his keynote. So we watched this last night. He likes the Monday night football slot, so the 7:30 p.m. it went to almost 9 p.m. last night.
Yeah.
So again, busy.
You got to make sure that you have the right priorities to skip the Monday night football and then attend the show. So, but it was an absolutely packed audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely packed.
And okay, so the big announcement was, well, let's roll the clip. I will roll clip number 1 here. Give me 1 second to cue this up. Let's see. Oh, there we go. All right, clip number 1 with Peter DeSantis, and he talked about, here we go, Aurora Limitless.
So we've asked ourselves, what would database sharding look like in a serverless world? And that's why tonight I'm excited to announce Aurora Limitless Database. Aurora Limitless Database makes it easy for customers to scale their database beyond the right throughput of a single server. With Limitless Database, there's no need to worry about the routing of your queries to the correct database shard. Your application just connects to a single endpoint and has the scalability of a sharded database. Aurora Limitless Database automatically distributes data across multiple shards. And you can configure Aurora Limitless Database to co-locate rows from different tables on the same shard to minimize having to query multiple shards and maximize your performance. But unlike common sharding approaches, Aurora Limitless Databases provides transactional consistency across all your shards. For peak performance, you still want to localize transactions on shards as much as possible. But as I'll show you shortly, Aurora Limitless Databases uses a unique approach to making these cross-shard transactions perform.
Okay, so that was the intro to Aurora Limitless Database. To set the stage, so what he did to introduce that, he first talked about how good serverless is. He talked about the construction of what went into Aurora Serverless. There's a system called Grover, which managed the log, and the idea that the database really is the log. And he talked about how Grover reduces Aurora I/O demands by up to 80%. That's what makes it competitive. And then finally, they launched Aurora. So he said that just because it is a private database, a serverless database, it still runs on a physical piece of hardware somewhere.
Yeah.
And because of that, it still is bound at any given time by how much hardware is allocated to it. And so as the database grows, it needs to do what's called sharding, so break it up into pieces and move those shards around.
Yeah.
So it can be, so it can exist on a machine that's bigger than any one physical machine.
Correct.
And because they've made improvements to their Caspian hypervisor, or the Caspian instance shard management layer, they can now offer what's called limitless databases. So they've totally abstracted away the whole issue of sharding.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what is very, very interesting about this this particular solution is how they've engineered around the cap theorem. Now, for those of you not familiar, there's a theorem called the cap theorem, which basically states that when you have a distributed data system, you can, at any point of time, just achieve 2 out of 3 objectives. The objectives being availability, consistency, and the partition tolerance of the data. Now, over the last 3 or 4 years, I think some of the hypervisors have created some amazing innovation that have overcome some of these limitations in some very, very innovative ways.
Should we find out what those ways are?
Yes, let's dive right into it.
All right, let's figure out how they've done that.
Also has a local atomic clock to keep time in case that satellite is momentarily unavailable. And each of our availability zones has multiple of these time distribution racks. Now, at the bottom of the rack, you can see the specialized time synchronization network that distributes this timing pulse. Let's have a look at that. This is one of those time sync appliances. And in the middle, you see a Nitro chip. And on the right, you see an FPGA. Together, these are used to implement our time synchronization network. But what you don't see on this slide is a network ASIC. And that's because these devices don't route packets. Instead, they do one thing, and they do one thing only. And that is they synchronize clocks. In combination with the specialized Nitro cards in our EC2 host, this network distributes a timing pulse directly to every EC2 server. And every step of this distribution is done in hardware. There's no drive.
All right, so what they're saying, to summarize, they've built out a custom timing synchronization network, and also with enhancements to Nitro v3, they can do very precise timing. So into the millionth of a second across any EC2 instance has now precise timing synchronization. And so what that means is that on a distributed database, you can write a transaction like, I've spent deduct $10 from my account at this exact time, and then some other shard can say, request $20 from that account at a millionth of a second later. Correct. And it will still figure out the order and the consistency.
Correct. I mean, this is one of the biggest challenges, and by creating dedicated hardware to solve that time synchronization problem, where now, because of this dedicated hardware, you can actually scale up to millions of EC2 instances without running into the consistency of time issue across all of this very, very large network. So, I mean, I assume at some point there is some, physical limitation about how many, or what the size of the database is going to end up being. But that said, for all practical purposes, the kind of hardware that they've created over here, it truly is limitless. I mean, for most applications, you would be able to just run it without ever worrying about scale, without ever worrying about having all the asset properties of the database being retained in, no matter what scale you're operating at.
And it's really neat that they've abstracted these different layers. So this is in the Amazon Time Sync service.
Correct.
So it's not just some secret hidden network that only they get to use, but there is now the Amazon Time Sync service.
Correct.
And part of, I guess, one point he made that was really neat. Actually, I'll play this clip. One point he made is let's see. He's better at speaking than I am. Let me play this one. Here it is.
Latency of an Elastic Cache lookup on serverless is about half a millisecond. And there's great outlier latencies as well. And the last...
Oops, that was the wrong one. Let me try. This is the one. It was... problem solving. Here we go.
The
latency of an Elasticache lookup on serverless is about half a millisecond.
Right.
And there's great out
that when you solve a problem in one area, you can use that solution to solve another problem. And so the other problem that they solved was the introduction of Elasticache serverless.
Correct. I mean, you've seen this pattern over and over again, right? When Aurora first came out, Aurora was amazing and a breakthrough approach to building a database from scratch because they were able to separate out the storage and the compute as two completely independent layers. The fact that their storage was based on a sharded S3-like setup where you could actually have multiple readers from storage that span multiple different storage volumes across different availability zones. In fact, I think there were 6 replications that were happening. And then compute kind of just sat independently on top of it and it could move wherever you wanted. That Aurora serverless, or that technology they basically took to pretty much every other service like Neptune and a whole bunch of others, even Elasticache, Elasticsearch. That sharded mechanism was pretty amazing. So so I think that pattern kind of continues, and the serverless Elasticache is just another amazing, exciting serverless service.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting to see Elasticache serverless and Aurora Limitless Database. And it's neat to know behind the scenes how they're both managed by Caspian, which can put multiple shards onto multiple places. And also it all works because of this sophisticated time sync network and custom Nitro. All right, so in Peter DeSantis' talk, we had this great view of these new services. Then he brought in a guest. He brought in Brent Rich from Riot Games.
Yeah.
So, and that's where our friend Marcos, who works at Riot. So there we go. So this is Brent. He's head of global infrastructure and operations at Riot Games. Now Riot has been doing a lot. So I guess Brent set the stage. Back in 2017, they had one game. So he said, it was Riot Games, but the S plural was aspirational. They had one game, and they were completely in an on-prem setup. And so within 2017, they made a decision to migrate everything to the cloud, and then decided that all new things would be in the cloud. Correct. So his talk was really neat. I love how he said they used to have these outages that would take half an hour or an hour to propagate through the system. But now they have what they call hiccups, where it's just little microservice things. Another point that he made that I thought was really useful is when they had an issue with EKS. Let me play the EKS video, the point that he made.
As I wrap this up, I'd like you to remember that Riot didn't actually do anything groundbreaking here. When there were problems, we looked for solutions, and it just so happened that AWS had them for us. And so a quick tip, make the ask. It doesn't matter what size company you are. If it makes sense for the broader customer base, AWS just might do it. Or like us, there might be a short-term solve.
So I like that, make the ask, right? And that's part of what we've been talking about for a while is communicate with AWS. Communicate, start with your TAM, start with your solutions architect, and they can point you in the direction of a certain team that you need to go to. At some point, you'll get to an EBC where you'll actually have future access to the roadmap, and it's very collaborative. And so the idea is, with them, they had a limitation that EKS at the time could give you a 15-minute warning and then kill the cluster.
Right.
And they had games that would last on average 35 minutes, but they still wanted to use EKS. And so he said they just made the ask. And Amazon was able to realize, okay, this is probably a use case that not just Riot, but what's the rule of thumb? If anytime one person is asking, 100 people are probably wondering.
Correct. So I couldn't agree more. You should reach out to all of your AWS connects. In my 16-year experience working with AWS, there have been numerous examples of, services that we've asked for, and yeah, sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but once there are enough customers wanting the same thing. I remember one very distinctly. I was in Seattle for one of the meetings at AWS, and my big problem was I think at that particular point of time we had something like 3,000 AWS accounts, and VPC peering just didn't work because VPC peering is not and was not transitive in nature. So if you had 3 networks or 3 VPCs, the only way to connect them would be to have a n square,
I
system.
see. So 1 goes to 2, 1 goes to 3, 3 goes to 2.
Correct.
So if you have 4, then you need 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
So you'd basically have the n square problem, and also the routing tables had a limit of only 100 entries. So how do you do n square? That means you could never interconnect more than 10 VPCs together for your corporate environment. So that was a huge issue. So simple things like, back then GitHub was not quite what GitHub is today. So we still kind of had hosted SVN servers or hosted Git servers. And when you host your own Git server, even for different accounts to be able to access source control used to be a massive challenge. So yeah, and then Transit Gateway came about, which was an easy, simple way to kind of expand and manage massive networks. So yeah, the takeaway really is AWS is one of those rare organizations that listens, and it's part of their DNA, it's part of their culture. So make the most of it. As a customer, you have nothing to lose by speaking to your TAMs, your SAs, or just directly sending a note to the product teams and saying, this is my ask, can we at least have a conversation about it? And my guess is 9 out of 10 times they will oblige and they will listen to you. They will at least give you a good hearing. And if they can't do it, they'll tell you why. But, there's absolutely no downsides to asking.
That is a huge differentiator. I've heard of people who interact with a particular different cloud, and they say, I spend a 6-digit amount and I can't get someone on the phone.
Yeah.
So it's really neat that AWS is taking the opposite approach.
Correct.
You can talk to people, you can interact with people. That's really neat. All right, so wrapping up Peter DeSantis' keynote, he then went on to Redshift serverless,
Yes.
And AI-driven scaling, which is what we covered a few minutes ago.
Correct.
Let's play the clip. Let's cue that up about AI-driven scaling. It is, here we go, AI scaling.
To announce a massive set of improvements to Redshift, Amazon Redshift serverless, using next generation AI-driven scaling and optimization. This is going to be exciting. These innovations represent monumental improvements to Redshift serverless's internals to address each of the challenges we just spoke about and deliver up to 10x better price performance. Our first innovation is building a detailed model of the expected load of the data warehouse to proactively scale our capacity. By building a machine learning-based forecasting model trained on the historical data of the data warehouse, we can automatically and proactively adjust capacity based on anticipated query load. But of course, no matter how good we are at predicting what will happen next, we're always going to be surprised. So we need to improve our ability to react and make good decisions in the moment. For example, when Dave sends his next complex masterpiece, we want to avoid bogging down the production cluster and instead schedule that big query on its own capacity. And because Dave's query is long running, the extra time probably won't be noticed by him. And actually, he might get better results because by optimizing the infrastructure for Dave's query, he might get his results sooner. But how do we understand each query in real time as it arrives? Like before, we use AI. However, this time, our machine learning models help us understand the resource demands and performance of each query.
Okay, so that's the AI-driven optimizations that are happening for Redshift serverless. So the idea is there's still an amount of hardware allocated at any given time for a certain Redshift database. And in a steady state, there may be small queries coming in, give me all the sales yesterday or in the last hour, and those are quite predictable and small scale, steady state.
Correct.
But then occasionally you will get a large ETL job or a large, say, data science job, which will have many joins in it, and say, give me for the last 6 months all sales joined to user profiles, and maybe have those user profiles pull in their historical data, and it could be a very long, complex query that would take a long time to execute. And so your alternatives are, well, try and let that query run and let all the other ones slow down. Now, the part that he emphasizes, it's hard to know in advance how long a query will take.
Yeah, I mean, basically what you need in a situation like this is a very intelligent router that, as and when it's receiving queries, it makes a decision about where to route it, whether to the existing hardware or whether to provision new hardware and put it along a different lane. And that's where I think a lot of the AI innovations, and we've seen a bunch of these AI innovations over the years. It's not just the generative stuff, but the what we now call just the ML stuff. That's been there for a while, where you learn about these patterns, you create these intelligent management layers of your infrastructure. And I think you're going to see tons more of this. So just continuing on the conversation from yesterday, sorry. I actually see generative AI and ML in general playing a huge role, not just in our interface with services and systems, but also in the intrinsic management of infrastructure and systems, which you should not have to touch anymore. So one of the interesting questions that I had at the end of the, during the Peter DeSantis keynote was, we were having this conversation late last night as well. Why isn't everyone moving to serverless, right? Why are folks, once now, if you have Aurora Limitless and things like that, why are people still sitting and managing their own instances? And I think the interesting answer that came during the keynote itself was, there's going to be some level of feature disparity between the serverless version and the managed version, and a familiarity with that the old way or the managed way is going to cause people to kind of make the bet on managing their own setup.
And I liked how he emphasized that was even built into the name, right? Simple storage service, simple queuing service.
Yes.
Right. And so initially they were quite limited relative to their hosted offering. Right? SQS, when it first came out, it did one thing.
Correct. And it actually took a while to build out, a certain level of feature parity across all of these services. And we're talking about 5 to 8 years to kind of get to feature parity. But now with a lot of the generative AI, I think you'll start seeing that window shrink dramatically, because the interface is going to change. It's going to become the norm to, have the LLMs be able to process natural language. And then so what happens under the hood is kind of going to be more of a black box than ever before. And so as long as you can, achieve the same outcomes, who cares if it is serverless or managed? Because that's the expectation. It's going to become harder and harder to manage all of this stuff yourself. It will be easier to have an AI managed service that decides when to scale, decides when to route your queries to different systems, or just take action and produce responses that are more context sensitive to what you really want.
Well, and seeing all the work they're putting in with Caspian and with all their behind the scenes routing, and another thing, because of their behind the scenes networking, they can very quickly move enormous data structures from one physical machine to another. And it makes the cost of thinking about infrastructure so high, right? Because there's so much that serverless can do. You can just move things, so it can move things quickly and manage things behind the scenes. They can use AI, predictive ML, to figure out what is the best bin packing for any given database at any given time, and let them optimize that. They're only going to get better and better and better at it. They're accumulating data at an enormous rate. So let's think about, how do we wrap up the Peter DeSantis keynote yesterday? The one thing I was surprised about was a relatively light discussion on Graviton. It wasn't much there, and no new instance types announced. So that's why I brought my Here we go, Mike. Where's the
big
new instance types? There we go. So no new instance types announced. I was hoping to see something, maybe a Graviton 4, or who knows. So what do you think? What's your thoughts on that?
I'm still. I still feel like there should be a Graviton announcement because it's been over a year since the last one was announced. So given just historic speed at which all of these innovations have come in, I'm hoping that today during Adam's keynote, we are going to hear some announcements, but we're going to have to wait and watch. That keynote is going to be in an hour and a half from now.
Yes. Let's pull up the Adam Slipsky. Yeah, there we go. He is talking very soon. We're going to hear from him this morning. Is it 9:30 or 10:30?
It's at 8:30.
Oh, 8:30. That's right.
It's at 8:30 going on to, or is it at 8 going on to 10:30?
I'm just checking. No, it's 8 a.m. to 10:30.
To 10:30. So it's in an hour from now.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we're going to watch. We're going to take detailed notes, and we're going to give you our breakdown tomorrow morning on Adam's keynote. We're really looking forward to what he has to say, and also not just him, but all the guests that are joining for parts of the speech. I don't think he's going to do 2.5 hours by himself. In fact, I know he's not. They've already listed a handful of guests that will be joining him on stage. That'll be exciting.
I'm looking forward to that. Once again, there's a lot happening here in Vegas. So if you're here, don't miss out visiting the expo floor. Visit the CloudFix booth, 1529. We'd love to see you over there. Meet with the amazing team. Again, I'm going to repeat the advice that I gave yesterday. Meet with folks. This is a networking event. Meet with all the amazing folks from AWS, the different product teams, the different solutions architects, the different TAMs, your account managers, some amazing folks here. Meet with them, learn more about how you can leverage these services to be more productive, to scale, and solve a bunch of problems that you have within your organizations. And most importantly, just have fun. There's so many events going on. There's so many activities all over the place. It's not enough time to catch up with everything. But as always, we'll be here again tomorrow morning, covering all the happenings of the day today, bright and early at 6 a.m. We will be hard at work compiling all the happenings of the day. So please join us. And if you have any questions, comments, feedback, please let us know. We will do our best to make sure that we hear you and respond to any comments and suggestions you have.
Yeah, definitely. We really appreciate the feedback. Thank you for joining, whether you are on the other side of the world or in a hotel room across the street. Thank you for being here, and we will see you tomorrow morning.
Some tools just find AWS cost savings and make you do all the work. Visualizing cost opportunities is great, but that's not enough. CloudFix, on the other hand, actually delivers those savings for you. And you don't need to worry because CloudFix fixers are AWS recommended and easy to use. It's the only tool that fixes cost savings opportunities and doesn't just find them. It's the easiest way to save money on AWS. It's all 100% automatic and risk-free. And the best part is that it works non-stop. See for yourself. Click on the button to get a free demonstration of CloudFix and stop overspending on